In Spanning Gateway, I'm Asia, and we're going to talk about spirit, spirituality, and then we're going to talk about duality of spirituality because that's very important. We have an understanding of what that is. So, I have the definition right here. We're going to go over the actual, information that you can see for yourself because this is not about belief. I'm not here teaching any type of belief system. I'm using information that we all have access to and adding the spiritual element to it so you can have a broader perspective about what spirit is and you can decide for yourself because that's your job. Okay? But the important thing about this is commonality because we can choose to believe in whatever we want to believe in as individuals, but we all have to have something to connect to. That's why information and literature and stuff like this is very important. So when it comes to spiritual knowledge, there's a lot floating around, but we all have to have will be best for us to have something to connect to. This is what I'm talking about, a common atmosphere, so we can all be able to live cohesively, right? Because that's what we came here to do, was to exist and be able to interact with others. And I don't think we're doing a very good job at that at this point. So let's get into spirit. I got this from my dictionary, okay? Webster's New 20th Century Dictionary Unabridged, okay? So spirit is a noun. Spirit is a state of being. It's an existence, okay? So it just is. And we use words to define what that existence is. And then we called it spirit, or whoever decided to define it in the dictionary, they identified it. Okay, so that means that they observed spirit. Okay, they took the time into observing spirit and they were able to come to certain conclusions and judgments about what spirit is. And then they have it in literature, and this is the history of the word. Really, it's the chronologically. Oh, something. It's the chronology. She knew it. She did. She called it something else, but it's chronology. Okay, it's the chronology of the word. That's a better word for history than his story. Okay, because many people have stories, and we each have our own individual stories as well. Okay, we have our own histories. So, spirit, noun, state of being. So, the root of the word spirit is the soul, life. Okay, so if you can't identify with being a soul, then you can identify with being life, right? Because we're all living. You have to understand that you're living. We're all living. So if you don't want to call yourself spirit, you can call yourself life. Okay, it's whatever. But we have to identify that we are individuals, and that's what soul represents, is the individual self apart from spirit. Okay, because spirit just exists and then we exist within it, right? Because if we are existing in a spiritual world, a spirit full of life and soul, then we have to identify that we are also composed of that, okay, in physical form. So, number one, we just went over the root, which is the soul, the life, and then number one is the life principle. Okay, and I think I got in an earlier video talking about principle, and principle just means beginning. Okay, so the beginning of life is spirit. So this is just another way to interpret words. Okay, I'm not here to tell you what anything is. I just want you to listen from my perspective, open yours, use your intuition for you to come to your own conclusions. So the life principle, the soul, life, and then it says especially in man. So especially in man, when it's referring to the word spirit, so that is identifying after somebody many, I'm sure, have observed, because it is known as part of literature, that man is identified with spirit. So we can consider ourselves spirit, right? Originally regarded as an animated vapor. Okay, this is very important because people are so tied to words and don't see the the workings of words and how they're really fluid. I don't know what other way to describe that, but that's why so many words we can flow together and use for different purposes and things depending on the will of the person. So when it comes to animated vapor, we know that any type of animation is not just the cartoons that you see on TV, but a different expression of animation is expression within itself. Expression is animation, it's image in motion, right? So that's a form of animation. A still is without movement, but as movement continues and starts and continues, then it's called animation. So we are animated, right? Because our existence is about movement, just like we have movement in time. So vapor is just a lighter element of water or whatever substance it may be, but vapor is what is a good word to call it? Well, of course it's the element, but it's the manipulation of the element. Yeah, because we as men do manipulate elements, but those elements are already able to do those things on their own. That's why we have different cycles in nature. So animated vapor is just a lighter form, okay? A lighter form of being. So it's not necessarily something you can see because you don't really see too much of vapor, right? So it's just a way to explain spirit. It's not saying that's exactly what it is, but it's using words to describe what it is. And we have to be able to see that for ourselves. Infused by breath. So animated vapor infused by breath. And we know that that's probably why they use the word vapor too, because it has to do with air, in which we have to be able to breathe in order to exist. So breath is very essential to spirit because it's the give and the receive. Receive will be the part of the spirit, the feminine. The give will be masculine because it's a flow of in and out. It's a rhythm. Or as bestowed by a deity. Now there's many different, perspectives of what deity is. And they come in many forms. So this is not necessarily, we're not going to dive too much into that right now, but I just want to identify the word spirit, and it's with the soul. So the soul, we're not going to dive deep into what those belief systems are. We're going to know that soul is synonymous with individual, life. So we know life is whole, life is happening outside of us, and life is actually happening within us. We are life. So we have outside, inside, a collective, an individual, a one, a two, a relationship, okay, with spirit, okay, which is the operator of the individual self. So that being said, spirit is the soul life. So by that definition, that means when you are spiritual, okay, you are existing, you're living in the naturalist form of the word. So spiritual is just existing, it's life, spirit, okay? And then what man has done, with the ideas in man's mind, they build rituals and practices and religious systems around spirituality, because what spiritual is basically the continuance of life. So since spirit is the continuance of life, there's many things that we do to extend our life here, right? Depending on the different systems that are happening within us and outside of us. So being spiritual is acknowledging those systems and taking care of them. And there's many different systems in many different bodies to take care of. So in its most natural form, spiritual is just that. Life, spiritual. Now, spirituality, and here's the definition of spirituality: by means of breath. Okay? By means of breath. That has nothing to do with any type of spiritual systems, spiritual rituals, none of that. Okay? This is just existing by breath. Don't we all do that? So before we attach any other belief systems to what being spiritual is, because this is how we're going to get into duality of spirituality. But before any type of belief system, we can come to an understanding of what spirit is, right? And then we can see what that means for ourselves, because this is something that's known. This isn't like it's hidden. This is maybe part of esoteric knowledge, hidden knowledge. That's why a lot of people aren't familiar with this. But this is how depending on where you are spiritually, we spiritual people that know, not believe, know this. And there will be a part 2, duality of spirituality.